Most students struggled during COVID with education, and in that, they've experienced incredible learning loss. But can technologies help them bridge that gap? We're going to talk about that and more on the Celebrate Kids podcast.
Don't be afraid of the dark. Be careful with stars. Not every light is gonna guide you, baby. Don't let them rain on your spark. Keep it close to your heart. All of the pressure's gonna drive you crazy.
There's a challenging reality for most parents, and the reality is that most students who went to school during COVID had an incredibly hard time. There were no mentors guiding them through. Instead, most days, students worked on their own to try to understand information, do homework assignments, all while their parents were trying to make ends meet in the middle of a pandemic. It was an incredibly hard time. And what we've seen is an incredible reality in learning loss. It was a dark time. And on the back end, now we're seeing that there are technologies that can help bridge that gap for these students who weren't able to build muscles that they're expected to have now in school. But do these technologies really benefit the students? Is there more to schooling than just fulfilling mundane tasks? For some parents right now, this is a dark time because we need to navigate school with our kids. And many of them didn't build the muscles they should have from the past few years. Well, Dr. Kathy has some great insights on this and some great helps for us as we look to navigate what the role of technology is in schooling and what the purpose of receiving knowledge is in building wisdom. Let's turn to Dr. Kathy now. Dr. Kathy, researchers are calculating that on average, school-aged children across the United States, across all grades, lost about 35% of a school year's worth of learning during the pandemic. These learning gaps were reported to not have recovered as of May 2022. The loss of skills was worse in math and reading, possibly because some parents were less able to help their children with math exercises, is what some of the researchers are speculating. In contrast, some skills children developed during the pandemic were a result of hybrid or remote learning. There's a psychologist from Pratt Institute in New York City, and he says that kids were getting super familiarized with cyberspace and technological context, and will in the future be more native to the digital world because of the pandemic. And I thought this was interesting because I don't know if you've been following the world of artificial intelligence, but there's this thing called ChatGPT out in the world. It's this AI program that basically students can type in anything from how to understand quantum physics to can you write a poem for me? And ChatGPT will scrub the internet and basically create, whether it's math problem answers or full term papers. And it's really interesting because we're talking about COVID learning loss as a deficiency, but there are some that are looking at it that maybe it's going to propel a new generation into a new era of learning. And so I'd love to hear your perspective on this because I think we all look at COVID and the pandemic as this incredible, harmful event that hurt children's learning prospects. And then months later, we discover this thing called ChatGPT that can basically do most of the work that these students have lost during the pandemic. What should we think about this? How should we process this?
I'm alarmed. I mean, I don't know about other people, but, it's true that I'm totally not at all surprised at the loss of academic learning. I'm not surprised that children will be, and they've always been more adept at the use of digital devices and platforms than older adults, even prior to COVID. And now we have this happening. But my friend, it really concerns me because we have kids who are not going to do their own thinking. We have kids who are going to give up even faster. Already our technology has taught children that things should be easy and entertaining and about me and all those kinds of things. And now you add this to it. So then they don't have to think, they don't have to reason, they don't have to work and apply themselves and use effort. We're going to have a potentially lazy generations who understand data, like they'll have answers to certain questions, but they won't be able to reason their way to a conclusion on their own. And I think that is extremely dangerous to think about for the future of individuals and frankly, for our country. It doesn't bode well. That's pretty negative, but I think I'm going to stand on that.
That is pretty negative, but I've been wrestling with this a little bit because a lot of the work that we do is about translating information into practical applied kind of living. So how can we be not just knowledgeable in areas, but have wisdom to know what to do in different areas? And what we're seeing right now is with the speed of technology, we can have greater information at our fingertips and greater knowledge. But I've been wrestling with this because we need to build these muscles of wisdom, how to apply this. And I know for myself, I've seen my kids like pick up information and learn information and even like be able to understand information that it would take me months in a library to dig through books to try to get just the sheer amount or volume of information. They've been able to do it faster. And now I think we're working with them on logic, in my house. We're trying to build that wisdom. Is there something to be said here for what kind of deficiencies the digital world is in danger of creating? And how can parents kind of step into this knowing that the reality is their kids are just going to get more information faster, and we need to have these muscles in our family to build wisdom? What are some of those steps that we can take as families?
Right. In my book, Screens and Teens, I talk about how wisdom is the right application of the right information with the right outcome. Wisdom is the application of truth. For the believer, I believe wisdom is agreeing with God. These technologies allow information and data to be, I don't want to say understood immediately, because it's not necessarily understood. It's just received immediately. But will they know how to use it? Will they be able to put it into good practice? Will they recognize right from wrong? Will they recognize a false answer or an incomplete answer or a biased answer? Possibly not, because they're used to, hitting a button, if you will, and having the wheels turn behind the scenes, and then, some conclusion is drawn. So I think, information, easy access to information, maybe it's neither bad nor good. Depends on what you do with it. But the potential is that we've got lazy kids who don't know how to discern what is better, best, and good. And I think that really concerns me.
What should parents do in this moment, knowing that this is the world that our kids are growing up in? What are some practical steps that we can take to kind of give hope for them right now?
One of the things maybe is to discern with our kids, where are we going to get our information from? Even on the, if you will, World Wide Web, there are any number of places where you can go and get definitions of words, or you can learn about truth and false ideologies. So maybe we make sure our kids know that, this site is dependable and they come from a biblical worldview as we are raising you. And we would recommend you go there, but we want you to, avoid this particular site for information because they're biased in such a way that we find really harmful. So good old fashioned discernment of the source of the information, I think, is good. The source of wisdom, if I can put it maybe that way as well. Getting, teaching effort, teaching perseverance, those kinds of things, of course, we need to be doing. And I think the role model of, getting our kids to read biographies and autobiographies of inventors, now certainly athletes and musicians and others who have worked hard behind the scenes before they became, quote unquote, famous and popular and wealthy. Things are good. And then, inventors, my brother's a chemist, and it takes years to develop certain things. And you don't see that behind the scenes work. And then all of a sudden, somebody makes a headline and wins a prize. Well, it was years of effort behind the scenes with no notoriety to discover something because they were willing to work hard for something that they cared deeply about. So are we teaching kids passion and how to persevere with something that matters greatly to you?
Do you have any thoughts on how to develop perseverance? Because I tell my kids oftentimes when you're studying geometry or algebra, it's more a discipline of not giving up, right? You're going to solve this problem. You're going to have lots of problems in life. This is practice and building muscles so you don't give up. What do you have to say about developing perseverance in our kids for learning and knowledge and building wisdom?
Yeah, my new book on character will be, all about those kinds of things. How do we actually teach these qualities and not just talk about them? But absolutely, again, we can role model it. We can teach self-awareness, how easy or hard, what's it worth it to you? We can teach kids positive self-talk so that they can encourage themselves, even though they're almost at the answer, but they're not yet there. so that dad and mom don't have to always be the ones in the room, being their cheerleaders. I think there's some benefit of that. Again, identifying value, like what matters to me. When nothing matters, then nothing matters. And when everything matters, it's also really hard. But for kids, what really matters to you? And are you going to stay the course? Perseverance is defined as effort in spite of difficulties. So are we going to do it? Why would we do it? Again, who are the role models? We got to talk about it, teach it, model it, correct it, compliment it, those kinds of things.
I think those are great helps from Dr. Kathy. I think that her perspective here is really important. And it's something that I think we find inside of Scripture, where her insight and her wisdom here finds its grounding, especially in the book of Proverbs. And today, we're going to close our podcast by reading from Proverbs chapter 4, beginning at verse 1. And this is what the writer says. Listen, my sons, to a father's instruction. Pay attention and gain understanding. I give you sound learning, so do not forsake my teaching. For I too was a son to my father, still tender, and cherished by my mother. Then he taught me, and he said to me, take hold of my words with all your heart. Keep my commands, and you will live. Get wisdom. Get understanding. Do not forget my words or turn away from them. Do not forsake wisdom, and she will protect you. Love her, and she will watch over you. The beginning of wisdom is this: get wisdom. Though it cost you all you have, get understanding. Cherish her, and she will exalt you. Embrace her, and she will honor you. She will give you a garland to grace your head and present you with a glorious crown. For many of us that work with young people, we know that school can be an incredibly hard and challenging place for them. They're building muscles of fortitude and resilience inside of meeting the expectations, not only of their parents, but also of their teachers and the people that are working to mentor them. It can be incredibly tough for young people. And we can look to find shortcuts to get us to that next step. And we can encourage our students to use technology to cover over the mundane processes that they can step into, that next hoop that they need to jump through with schooling. But I think what the writer here in Proverbs says is really important, that we need to heed our father's instruction and listen to our mother's teaching. And in all of this, we understand that there is this garland of grace that comes and covers our head, and it presents us with this incredible crown, and that is this idea of wisdom. And those things are passed along by adults who purposefully engage in students' lives, and in many ways, they work to celebrate kids. And that's what we're about here at Celebrate Kids. And we hope that this has been an encouragement to you, a place that gives you courage to go out and to celebrate kids. And if it has, we'd love to hear from you. You can send us an email at ask@ignitethefamily.com. That's ask@ignitethefamily.com. We'd love to hear if there's a topic that you'd love to have us address. The other side of this, though, is that this is a podcast ministry. We want you to share this with your friends and share it with your family, because we believe that what God is calling us to do here is to give encouragement for adults to encourage young people to face dark times. And we need to do that together ourselves. And so on behalf of the entire Celebrate Kids team and Dr. Kathy Cook, I want to say thanks for listening. And I'm looking forward to seeing you again here tomorrow.